Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to take a look at Gerard Batten on Politics Live and how he was disgustingly treated.
Now, we're moving on to something different. Let's show you this picture of army cadets with the former leader of the far-right organisation, the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson, in the centre there. He was recently imprisoned for contempt of court. It also caused controversy, this picture. What are your thoughts, Siobhan, when you saw this picture?
I thought it was sad. I think Tommy Robinson represents all that's bad. I think he's shallow. I think he latches onto stories of great significance. I was watching Newsnight last night about the victims of child sex abuse, and the lady there who'd been a victim herself made the case that we now both know about it because of the brave victims and their willingness to stand up. It's not because Mr. Robinson got on the TV or undermined a trial where people were being prosecuted for it.
Well, Tommy actually speaks for many people in the country, and he does stand up for the victims of grooming gangs. Just because one of the victims feels that he latches on to the story for the wrong reasons doesn't mean that others don't think that he's doing the right thing. So even though that victim went through a horrible ordeal, in a way, Tommy is still standing up for her and speaking out on her behalf. Whether she knows all the facts behind the grooming gang is another thing. Just because she's a victim doesn't make it her word gospel.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my daughter's an army cadet. I think it's a marvellous thing for young people to do, and I wonder how many of those army cadets know who he was, had an informed opinion on them. I think he was using it.
He's photobombed it to some extent.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's not good for the army cadets because I very much doubt they knew who he was.
I think they knew exactly who he was, and they probably all come from similar backgrounds to him and agree with many things that he speaks about and disagree with many others. Also, thank you for your daughter joining the Army Cadets. On to the idea that it was a photobomb, I don't know how Tommy could photobomb a picture while he is front and centre in the picture.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the video, you know, they're shouting Tommy, Tommy, Tommy because they recognise him, but that's not to say they're endorsing his political views. I'm sure they would have started chanting, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, and pose for a selfie with Jeremy Corbyn too. It was just an opportunity to pose for a selfie with a celeb.
That could be true as well, but I highly doubt that they would do the same for Jeremy Corbyn, considering Jeremy Corbyn's stance on the military. It's also very interesting that they don't let Gerard Batten comment on the picture straight after all of the others.
Right, as part of our conference season interviews, we've been joined by the leader of UKIP, Gerard Batten, who's here with us now. You are someone who supports Tommy Robinson. You'd actually like him to join UKIP. This is a man, of course, who's a convicted criminal, a man who led the far-right English Defence League and was once considered beyond the pale by the party you now lead, and who said this, Gerard Batten: every single Muslim watching this, on 7/7 you got away with killing and maiming British citizens. The Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again. This is the man you'd like to see join UKIP, and you are backing a call to violence against a whole community.
Well, first of all, you would have to prove that that's a call to violence against the community. It could have meant political force, as in demonstrations. So there's a very loose area to try and prove that that's a call to violence.
Your producer asked me onto this programme to talk about Brexit, and I said I'd do that. And they said Tommy Robinson might come up, and I said OK. You've had me on here, I've come here today to talk about Brexit, and now you want to talk about Tommy Robinson. Now, it seems to me that the media is obsessed with Tommy Robinson. So let me finish. If you want Tommy Robinson, why don't talk about Tommy Robinson? Why don't you invite him onto your show?
Because if they did that, Gerard, then they wouldn't be able to say that he's these things that he's actually not, because then he could just come back at them and prove that he's not them things. It doesn't play into their favour to have him on the show. Even though they technically should, it doesn't prove their point, because then he just proves them wrong.
Yeah,
I've got his number in here.
I will. You can give it to us.
I can give that to you.
You can give it to us.
show.
But Gerard Batten, you have made.
You ask him these questions directly, because the media say a lot of things about Tommy Robinson.
Why do you want him to be part of UKIP?
The best person to answer the questions about Tommy Robinson is Tommy Robinson, who can give you the truth about what's happened to him. So why don't you ask him on your show?
Right, and if you make a
I'm talking to
Hang
Joe.
on.
You've had a good Joe. You've had a good go.
Siobhan, I'm
Now
going to
it's
let
my
you. I
turn.
will let you talk to Gerard in a moment. But first of all, Gerard Batten.
I absolutely fucking love how he shut that woman down. He wasn't taking her shit.
It is you who has made Tommy Robinson a thing as far as your leadership
No, I
is
haven't.
concerned.
I have been asked constantly about him.
Let me put the question
I have
to
said,
because you want him to join UKIP. UKIP actually has in its constitution very clearly states that they will not have members or former members of the English Defence League joining UKIP. You say you would like him to join and that you changed the rules in order to have him join. So you made it a thing, not me.
Whether or not they want to change the rules, which I don't think they do want to change the rules, because I believe there's a clause within their rules that allow them to allow certain people, which is fine. But whether they want to change it or not, that's their party's decision and they should be allowed to do so.
And don't make it immediate. No, let me finish. You also tweeted in support of those army cadets who were surrounding Tommy Robinson in that picture, which is why we started with that. So let's just get that clear. It is perfectly fair to ask you questions about why you want Tommy Robinson, and I have put into context who Tommy Robinson is. Why do you want that man to join UKIP?
You haven't put into context who Tommy Robinson is. You've put into context a distorted view of Tommy Robinson that may match up to what your context of him is, but the actual way to give context of who he is to have him on. Don't fucking lie.
First of all, in our constitution there is a provision which allows us to waive the rule if that's the agreement of the chairman and the NEC. And let me finish because I'm answering your question.
I wonder why she just tried to stop him from talking. Maybe it's because he was proving her wrong, and she can't have that, because then it proves that she was lying and spreading fake news.
Whereby we can waive the rule on prescribed membership of people who've been in prescribed parties, if that's something that we want to do.
Right.
I have said as my personal opinion that I wouldn't mind, I would be in favour of Tommy Robinson being allowed to join, because I think that he's a tremendously brave man. He's done a lot of things that I'm happy to say that I don't condone, I don't approve of, but I think in the great scheme of things, he's a very heroic person who stands up for the victims of industrialised sexual abuse in this country.
All right, well, let's talk
and
about
if we could
that.
let him in, then I'd be happy with that. But that will be a decision of our party members, not me.
Exactly. All Gerard Batten wants to do is put it to the party whether they should let him join. That's perfectly reasonable and no issue with them doing that. And yet for some reason, the news is trying to make it a big thing that they're changing rules, which they're not. Fucking stupid. And our money, our tax money, pays for these people to fucking lie.
But why do you want a man who has condemned and does condemn whole communities for the crimes of a few?
He doesn't condemn whole communities.
Because I don't do that. I talk about the
But
ideology.
you support this man.
Well, everybody says lots of things. I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say.
But you want to change the rules in your party.
No, I don't
to
want
have
to change
that man,
the rules.
you would like members to back a change in the rules from someone who led a prescribed organisation.
As he explained earlier, they're not changing the rules. There's a clause within their constitution that allows them to waive it for certain situations, which is fine. So they're not changing the rules, you fake news lying bitch. And also, I love how she missed out something. She just said prescribed group, and I think that was on purpose, because in the British public, when you say prescribed group, that normally means towards terrorist groups. She missed out prescribed group to UKIP on purpose, in my opinion, because, well, she's fake news. Fuck her.
I would like the rules under our constitution which can be set aside in particular cases. So I'm not asking for anything completely different from what we've got now, just to be considered in one case.
Right.
And I think in the great scheme of things, if you look at what he does in its entirety, then it's more good than bad, and I think he's a very brave man that's standing up for the victims. Now, can I say something about the cadets?
No.
He should have been allowed to say something about the cadets. But she still wants to go down this rabbit hole of trying to pin Gerard Batten to supporting a quote-unquote far-right organisation, and she wants to paint Tommy Robinson in a more negative light because she's failing right now.
First of all, I'm going to let Siobhan in, and then we'll come back to the cadets.
The people sticking up for the victims were the very British justice system that had these guys on trial.
30 years fucking late, love.
That he was filming outside. You know, yes, people did let these girls down and probably are letting these girls down, and things got in the way, and these people should have been found much sooner.
And it's because of his pressure and the EDL's pressure that the story even broke. Now, the main journalist that broke this story, Andrew Norfolk, has even admitted that he did the story because he felt like he had to claim it back from the quote-unquote far right.
But it's happened now. There are court cases going on. There have people been prosecuted. And so it is working and it is happening. And from my perspective, Tommy Robinson is jumping on this bandwagon after it has left the station.
As I said, it was his pressure that even made it happen. But don't take my word for it. Let's have a look at the main journalist that broke the story's word on it.
EDL's goal was to stem the growth of a faith that it believed was corrupting the country. And in the grooming of white children, they saw not just a crime, but evidence of a broader Islamic agenda.
Militant Muslim gangs taking liberties in our towns and cities, taking liberties with non-Muslim youth, non-Muslim girls, raping, pimping, beating, abusing our whole system.
As you can see behind me, there's a massive police presence in Bradford today. Around 300 members of the police
The squeamishness of the liberal establishment, and that includes the media, national politicians, police forces, social services, in actually confronting what was going on, left a void, and into that void marched the EDL to spread a completely poisoned, a divisive agenda. It had become quite personal for me. There was a sense of actually reclaiming this story from the wrong agenda, the far right's agenda, and putting it squarely where it should have been all along.
All right.
They weren't let down. This was brushed under the carpet for 20 or 30 years by Labour authorities, the social services and Labour authorities, also the police forces, brushed this under the carpet, didn't want to know about it. It's only down to a few journalists and people like... Let me finish, please.
Well, as I just proved, Tommy Robinson played his part in pressuring the journalist to finally do articles about it.
You've had a long go.
Hang on, Gerard. This is a conversation. It's not just you riding roughshod over everyone.
It's down to a few journalists and people like Tommy Robinson and Peter McLaughlin, who wrote a book on this called Easy Meat, that we know about this at all. If it had been up to the Labour Party, we'd never know about it.
Yes, Jared, going after the Labour Party, because we know exactly what the Labour Party's like. There was a politician, I believe it's Naz Shah, who retweeted and tweeted something along the lines of that the victims should remain quiet or shut up for the sake of diversity. And she still got her job. She should have been forced to resign. So that just shows where Labour stands on it.
Can I just say...
Well, answer that question,
Yeah,
Siobhan.
I completely accept that councils let those girls down. I completely accept that the police let those girls down. But what I'm saying, it's brave social workers, brave victims, people who were willing to stand up and be counted that has got this issue as far as the courts and to system reviewed.
All right, we've talked about this. We've talked about this. Hang on, Gerard. We've talked about this and the victims. Let's hear.
Hopefully you just heard that conversation between Jared and that woman where he said that the Labour politician said that the victims should shut up for the sake of diversity, and that woman said, well, that MP's wrong. Not only is she wrong, she is disgusting. She should have been forced to resign for that. Any other politician would have been forced out of their seat or wherever the fuck they were, but she got to keep it. If that was a Tory that did it, Labour would be pressuring the Tories to kick them out. If it was a UKIP person that said that, the Labour Party would be forcing them to kick them out. Labour should have been forcing to kick her out, but they didn't. So it shows their position on it.
Let's hear from one of the victims, Sammy Woodhouse. Newsnight interviewed her. She was a victim of the grooming scandal in Rotherham. Let's hear what she said.
If they're going to talk about child rape, about the system and the failures, then they should be talking about it as a whole and not just by Pakistani Muslims. There's, majority of paedophiles are actually white males. A lot of people jumped on the bandwagon and just tried to use it for their own gain.
What is this? Your token victim that agrees with your position? I'm sure there's a victim out there that agrees with Tommy's position. See, it doesn't get anywhere. She went through horrible things that she should never have gone through. But I don't know if she knows enough about Islam or the reasons behind what happened to her, because there could be, and this is Tommy's position, my position, Gerard's position, and many others' position that Islam guided the men to do what they did. They are a minority in their community, but a significant minority nonetheless that should have been seen earlier and forced out, and actually stuff done about it to them.
Right, well, Gerard Batten, that is one of the victims who has basically said that there are people using this for their own political gain. You're one of those people.
Whether he's using it for political gain or not, at least he's actually fucking talking about it. And also, just because one victim has taken that position doesn't mean that there isn't a victim that takes Tommy or Gerard's position. So your argument is invalid.
No, I'm not. There are paedophiles across the whole of society. For example, the BBC covered up
well, are
Jimmy
there white,
Savile for
are there
50
white
years,
paedophiles? Are there white paedophiles?
Of course there are.
Right.
What an absolutely stupid question. This just shows what her agenda was. She just wanted to paint them as racists or bigots. She is an awful journalist and our money is paying for her. She should be forced to issue an apology to Gerard and she should be reprimanded by the BBC. What a stupid question.
And do you condemn all white people because there are a few white paedophiles?
The BBC covered up the whole Jimmy Savile thing for 50 years. Yes, there are, and I would come down on those people with the full force of the law. In this particular instance, there is the industrialised exploitation in sexual slavery across the country, which is not just being done for the sake of a perverted lust, but for business, run out of cab offices, run out of fast food offices, where girls are trafficked up and down the country.
But you're condemning all Muslims who sign up to... But you are condemning a whole community, all Muslims, men, women and children, if they adhere to an ideology that you think is hateful.
I'm not condemning individuals, and I've never spoken about individuals. I talk about the ideology. And you know, because you've had me on this programme before.
And who are the people who follow that ideology?
Well, that is
they are
decision.
Men, women and children who are part of the Muslim community. So you are condemning a whole community.
First of all, I don't know how much they know about their own ideology. Perhaps you should have someone and ask them.
He's not condemning the whole community. He's condemning the ones that possibly follow that religion to that extreme. Fucking, she is awful. She really needs to be punished for this awful interview.
I don't know how much they're signed up to it. I don't know how many agree with it. There are lots who leave that religion. I know because I've spoken at conferences.
Right, so is the only Muslim that you like someone who leaves the religion?
No.
What an awful question again. She is terrible. The BBC should be ashamed that our money is paying her wage and for her to be on our TV screens. She is fucking dreadful. No, nobody has a problem with Muslims that just pray and fast and all of that, go through their day peacefully and don't affect anybody else's lives. Nobody has a problem with them. People have a problem, though, when their religion starts seeping into our laws and changing our communities and affecting our country for the worst, such as the grooming gangs.
I have no problem with people who obey the law, want to live in a Western liberal democracy.
And the majority of Muslims do.
And can integrate with that.
If you can accept that the majority do want that, then you can accept that we are just talking about a minority. Thank you. Goodbye.
My problem is always with the ideology, because the ideology is the root of the problem.
Right. It is a religion, by the way. It's not an ideology. It is a religion.
All religions are ideologies.
And here we have just seen a clear attempt from the BBC to make it so that we can no longer criticise Islam. Islam is an ideology, just as Christianity is, just as Judaism is. We are allowed to criticise it. She is awful, and on screen you'll see the definition of ideology, and I believe that religions fall into this.
I go to church every Sunday, and I am, in many respects, proud of the Catholic Church. I am not proud of the sexual abuse that has happened, but I don't condemn my faith, the people who go to my church, all priests, because of sexual abuse. Those who are responsible need to be dealt with and feel the full force of the law, and it's the same across any faith.
The Catholic religion, which follows the gospel, nowhere in the gospel does Jesus say, those you have taken with your right hand you may possess.
But not everyone signs up to every letter of what is in religious text.
Some Muslims do in relation to sex slavery, because it was something that their prophet did and something that they think is acceptable.
Exactly. There could be a reason behind these grooming gangs that are more extensive than just them wanting to be paedophiles. Maybe they're following instructions from the Quran and following in the footsteps of their prophet, but you just don't want to look into that, and we do. Granted, it's a minority, we always stress it's a minority, but a significant one that needs to be addressed and looked into further.
You do. What would Gerard Batten in UKIP Britain do with Muslims who are and follow their religion and their text?
Nothing. Well, those who want to obey the law and don't cause a problem, I wouldn't do anything any more than any other citizen. But what we must do is take action against this kind of thing.
What
and the first step is actually prosecuting these cases rigorously. Happening. I'm not sure it's happening as rigorously as you might think, because it's still going on in a widespread way.
And that's the thing. If you read the book Easy Meat, it explains how the Labour councils and the different bits of government think that they can hide it even more by doing little prosecutions and little stories at a time. I highly recommend buying Easy Meat and reading it, because it will show you everything that Gerard is saying is correct and what they are saying is complete bullshit.
And what we need to do is to stop importing this ideology, which most of the, or half at least of the mosques and imams in this country are supported by places,
because it is a religion
like
for Muslims
Saudi
in this country.
Arabia and Pakistan, who are importing extremist ideology to us, and we need to clamp down on that. And it is an ideology because it's a belief system. All religions are ideologies because you sign up to a particular belief system.
Toby?
Thank you, Gerard, for putting her in her place. It is an ideology, and it will remain an ideology. Just because the followers see it as a religion does not mean that me, as somebody that doesn't believe in it, can't see it as a ideology. She's so fucking bad. I've changed my mind. She doesn't need to be reprimanded. She needs to be fucking fired. She is awful.
I think that, of course, the fact that there are some Muslim Pakistani men in places like Rotherham who've engaged in this appalling predatory behaviour does, of course, not mean that all Muslims should be condemned. I think where their religion, their ethnicity was a factor is that it meant that these crimes weren't investigated and prosecuted as promptly as they should have been by police officers and other authorities who are worried about being accused of racism.
But has it been used as political opportunism by people like Gerard Batten to underline what is, and many people would regard it as, hateful rhetoric against Muslims?
When I was growing up, I always remember the phrase, sometimes the truth hurts. Maybe that's what this is at the moment. Maybe Muslims aren't happy that the truth is coming out and they're not liking it as much. This guy seems somewhat reasonable. It seems like you could actually probably discuss it with him and prove to him why we are correct. I'm also going to cut out the next bit because he just goes on to a rant about fucking Brett Kavanaugh in the US, and I can't be asked to comment on that at the moment.
How do you feel about a party like UKIP, a party that its former leader, Nigel Farage, said shouldn't be turned into an anti-Islam party or an anti-Muslim party? He was relatively successful, you could argue. Gerard Batten is obviously ignoring that advice from Nigel Farage. How do you feel about wanting to change the party's constitution so it could allow someone like... Well, you would like the members to change it.
He's already explained it's not changing the rules. She is still trying to push and spread fake news that's been proven with like 5 minutes ago that she's lying. She is absolutely awful. She is the worst journalist I've ever fucking seen. She needs to be fired.
To accept someone like Tommy Robinson.
I think flirting with Tommy Robinson, I mean, whoever was to blame for the grooming scandal is one thing, but the idea that Tommy Robinson is any kind of solution, considering his history with the English Defence League, I mean, I used to live in Nottingham, and I remember they came to town one day and rampaged through areas of the city where ethnic minorities live, where Muslim community was based, causing trouble, vandalising things, starting fights. None of this which was condemned by Tommy Robinson at the time. I mean, I don't know why the media still gives Tommy Robinson a platform. He doesn't represent the working class.
Some working class people he does represent, and some he doesn't. That's just how it is.
He's a hot air merchant. He's not been elected to anything. And the fact that UKIP is now flirting with him, I mean, that says a lot about the party, and I hope its demise continues to.
And the party under you, what do you say about Nigel Farage's warning to you?
Well, Nigel Farage is no longer a part of the party, so he shouldn't be even trying to decide where the party goes from here. If he wanted to decide where the party goes from now on, he should have remained in the party.
Well, Nigel is wrong. Nigel didn't come to the conference 2 weeks ago, and if he had have done, or he came for the dinner afterwards, but he didn't come to the actual conference, and we had 2 days of about 1,400 people there. from up and down the country who are totally behind me and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do for the party. So if I didn't have the backing of my members, then I wouldn't lead UKIP, but I do, and I intend to speak out truthfully, honestly and vigorously for the things I believe in and the things they believe in.
So what he's just said there is UKIP is going the way it's going right now because the members want it to go that way, so Nigel can stay out of it.
I mean, would you be happy to accept Nick Griffin, for example,
Absolutely
into the
not.
budget?
The BNP,
Why?
Because the BNP has its roots and origins in neo-Nazism, and we do not want to be associated with that at all. We never have, and for the 25 years that I've been in UKIP, we have always had a prescription on people like the National Front and the BNP.
Exactly, he's able to prove why they won't let members of the BNP in. But now you're about to witness one of the worst moments I have ever seen from a journalist.
But you'd be happy to agitate for violence against those Muslims as you see them as extremists?
That is an absolutely outrageous thing to accuse me of.
No, I'm asking you. I didn't accuse you. I
have never advocated violence towards anybody.
So why do you support Tommy Robinson?
And for you to ask me on here and say that to me is not only insulting, it is a gross abuse of your position with the BBC.
No, I asked you at the beginning.
She did. She said, and I quote, "But you are happy to agitate for violence." That is you accusing him of saying that he is happy to incite violence. That is absolutely disgusting. And you are misrepresenting his views, you're misrepresenting Tommy's views, and you're using your platform and your position to spread fake news. The BBC should be fucking ashamed, and you should be reprimanded for that.
You support a man who says that the community, the Islamic community, will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again.
That may mean that they were going to turn up and demonstrate against it. It doesn't say that they're going to be violent.
What's the full force?
Well, if people turn out in a mass demonstration, that's full force, isn't it?
Right, all right. And
that doesn't mean they're advocating violence.
I said, would you be in favour of agitating or calling for? I said it at the beginning of the interview too, you just didn't answer the question. Fine, you said you wouldn't, but you would be in favour of mass demonstration.
Everyone's in favour of mass demonstration, even people on the left, like when they protested Donald Trump coming to the UK. Everybody needs to support everybody's right to mass demonstrate or protest.
Mass demonstrations go on all the time. 1 million people demonstrated against the Iraq War, didn't they?
All right.
Did it make any difference?
You wanted to say something about the
cadets.
You wanted to say something about the cadets, and I said you would be able to say.
First of all, it's a bit of a non-story because those cadets are merely trainees. They're not even in particular regiments or groups in the army. They are a group of trainees who turned out. They were in a car park. It was a spontaneous thing. And they actually then wanted their picture taken with Tommy Robinson. Now, that is not against any army ethic because it's not in the Queen's regulations that say you can't have your picture taken with a celebrity. So this thing has actually been blown out of all proportion.
At least one person on the panel talked some sense when it came to that picture of Tommy with them lads in the cadets. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.